Good evening, and welcome to another episode of The Fire Caves, a Star Trek Deep Space Nine podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Perry.
And I'm your host, David. Tonight we're talking about Season 6, Episode 22, Valiant. Before we continue, you can find us on Facebook, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube as The Fire Caves, a Star Trek Deep Space Nine podcast.
That is correct. And as I say every single week, you should find us and follow us because we're great. We're awesome. We're a good time. And I'm a bit cold tonight. So that's why I am wearing this, nice thick black hoodie here. So no, this is not me blending into my background or whatever. It's just or my beard running into my outfit here. I'm just cold. All right. Doesn't happen that often. So I've been wearing it all day. My daughter said I look like a bear, so I've been cracking up about that all day. So, which is funny because it's really not that cold here in Texas for this Christmas holiday. This is the week of Christmas, by the way. It's like what 73, 74 degrees, right now.
Mhm,
um, I do tend to keep my house a bit cooler because I like to
mhm.
be comfortable, and as a big man, cooler temperatures tend to prevail on that for me. So yeah, this is it.
Nice.
Um, but yeah, as always, before we really jump into the episode that we're going to be featuring tonight, we'd like to do a little check in with each other, of course. It's been a minute since we've actually done our episode. We've had some things come up, schedules have changed, and of course, as we've rolled into the holidays here, things have kind of been off a bit. So, before we jump into the episode, as always, let's do that to catch up. So, David, how has your week been?
Week's been fine. Yeah, it was mainly my fault, the scheduling. We had a bunch of Christmas events coming on, and like for example, my niece, whose birthday is the 23rd, she was hanging out with my side of the family, um, and we had a birthday day for her. We went out and watched the Chris. There's like a drive-through Christmas lights thing at the
Mhm.
Dell Diamond. You may have heard of that. Um, I did that
Oh,
a few nights ago.
well, we're right near there. You should have let me
Yeah,
know. We
I know, right? Should have called you up. Did that last night. We went and there's a an improv theater at downtown called the Hideout Theater in Austin. And at Christmas time, they do a Charles Dickens Christmas Carol inspired theme improv show. And so the idea is to recreate the overall setting and feel of Charles Dickens' show, but the whole thing's improv. Everything from the settings to the characters. Um, but it's a blast. I mean, the people who were doing the show last night are kind of the pros of the improv theater. You can get amateurs. You can go take classes on improv. But like the six that were there last night, like they are regulars. They are really good at it. Had a lot of fun at the show last night. Um, yeah, so just normal Christmas stuff. Our family does A Christmas Story as the main film that we watched. You know, the one Ralphie Ryder and his BB gun. Um,
Mhm.
Ralphie wants his the Ralph Ryder the Ralph
Red
anyway.
Ryder BB gun.
Red Ryder BB gun. Couldn't say it. That's the one we usually watch. We haven't watched it this year, at least not yet. My mom really loves Christmas with the Cranks with Tim Allen. Elf we've already watched.
Hmm.
There's one on Netflix. I think I mentioned it last year or a year or two ago at least, but called uh, Klaus, which is like a origin story for Christmas, the Christmas Santa Claus storyline,
Hmm.
which is a real fun. A former Disney animation guy doing that one. He has his own studio, and it much has a Disney feel to it, but it's not technically Disney. Um, but yeah, how about you? What movies do you guys usually watch?
Well, first and foremost, the week here or the week and a half, however long it's been, whatever, has not been all that eventful. Work has been rather chaotic with because we actually haven't been that busy with clients like that. We had people, a lot of people like opting to take early vacation, which oddly then made the rest of us who didn't take early vacation busier because of course things get shifted. So when the work is spread out and everybody's only got like maybe one or two clients to meet with all day long, it's great because you're just kind of like, as I like to say, it's free money. You're just sitting there being paid to sit at your desk. But then
Right.
when everybody leaves, now it shifts, and my 1 to 2 turns into 7, 8, 9, whatever, you know? So, there was that. Other than that, we've been, just kind of, kid finished up school, doing last minute gifts and shopping and things like that. Did some, um early. We always have the tradition of you get to open at least one gift on Christmas Eve. I think a lot of families do that. I've heard that. At least one gift. So we opened up gifts today, and it was the family got tablets. Uh,
Ooh,
little,
nice.
and it's a way for, I justify it anyway, as it's a way for us to like stay up on what each other is reading and
Oh.
learning. And it's got a, I made sure it had a bunch of like different learning apps and communication apps and stuff like that installed on it so that we can, if we're through the house or wherever, we can send each other messages. We can share a lot of things, hopefully allowing us to have um, a different kind of way of communicating. While, like as my daughter, for example, if she finds something interesting that she likes or whatever, she can tag it and send it to me in a message, or I'll get a notification, or however that's going to eventually work out. We're still in the early phases of learning that. It's all through our
Hmm.
various Google and Amazon accounts. So that's kind of the thing we're just getting used to because we
Right.
didn't use a lot of those. Well, correction, she hasn't. She's young. I've been trying to safeguard and gently guide her through technology. So, it's work in progress there. As for like other Christmas related things, to be quite honest, there's not a whole lot of them that I like. It's not that I'm Mr., bah humbug about Christmas or anything like that,
Sure.
but just I don't know, like, there are certain things that just they don't resonate with me the way they, I guess they would or should or however you wanna look at it, but I do the stuff for my kid now. It's not
Right.
about, it's about, making sure that she has, the memories and whatever. So we did, watch the traditional, those old claymation movies, the Santa Claus one, Rudolph,
Hmm.
all of those. And, like there were still aspects of them that I could enjoy, but overall, I just couldn't. I don't think I ever realized how creepy some of them were. The claymation, like until you're just really kind of like watching it now,
Yeah.
we have so many other types of animated mediums to watch claymation now. It's very odd. So
Hmm.
there was that, and then we watched the Goonies for the first time. Well,
Mm.
her first time anyway, and she really enjoyed that. And then, of course, I had to watch the greatest Christmas movie of all time, Die Hard.
I was gonna
So,
say, as soon as you said that, I was like, Die
yeah,
Hard.
of course, it's Die Hard. And yes, Die Hard is a Christmas movie. I don't care what anybody says.
Yeah.
It came out at Christmas time. It features a Christmas party. It's Christmas themed, even down to the killing. So
Hmm.
it's a classic.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
and to the question in the chat here, no, we did not watch any of the Grinch movies. Apparently, they watched those at school, so my kids
Wow.
all Grinched out. So
Gotcha.
no Grinch at
I
home.
love the animated Grinch for the original classic. It's funny. In the past week, I was watching a Netflix documentary on Winston Churchill, and they were doing like an AI version of his voice, like as if he were recording his memoirs. And
Mhm.
for some reason, the way they did it, it sounded like the recording of the voice, the narrator from The Grinch. Like it just felt so similar. I was like, something about the technology of the time must be coming through, and is what gives it that
Yeah, that I mean,
flavor.
there's probably a lot of that, like the technology, and then trying to make that match with current technology. There's going to be distortion there. I could see that.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that's really been it for us in a nutshell. I will say though, I have worked also on our show a bit, and have got a lot of the episodes uploaded, and they're out and available. I think like four of them all came out all in one go. So if you go back like last week and take a look, there's actually like four episodes you can listen to right now that weren't available before. So I have been making sure that everything is releasing in the correct order. It's just like whatever the last part of the algorithm, somewhere in there it's broken on like the time when it's released. So, episode 50, 60, 70, they're all coming out in the right order, but it's like instead of it being in this week and then the next week and the next, it'll dump three here and then nothing for a while or whatever. So still working on that. I don't know if it's my fault. I don't know if it's um, Spotify's fault, Apple's fault, whomever. I don't know. So trying to figure that part out. But all that to say, I did go back, double check. The episodes are there. You can listen to them. This episode will probably not be available actually until after New Year. So in addition to Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. There. All my bases covered. All right. So yeah, just bear with us. We're gonna get everything caught up. My goal is to have everything available and caught up before we start season 7. So that's not that far off. It is a lot of work to do in a short amount of time, but
Mhm.
hopefully we can get that all figured out. And and beyond that, you can always catch us here live. All the episodes are available on our YouTube channel as well. So if you haven't heard one that you or haven't got to watch one that you were really interested in hearing a bit more about, you can always go back to the channel and find them there and watch them. And of course, leave a comment. Let us know what you thought, what you think, what you thought. If there's something that we left out, anything along those lines. Okay,
Right.
love to hear from you. But we're not here to talk about all those things. We are here to talk about Valiant, as David
Mhm.
said early on. This is such a just a wonderfully nuanced, dark episode. It features a lot of things that I know as a fan back when it aired versus now being like, this is kind of what we wanted for a while, like
Mm.
something that we had always imagined for ourselves, and then to kind of be hit with, in a surreal way, a type of realism in Trek and how officers act that I don't think we've ever really seen before or since. So I really enjoyed this episode. So can't wait to get into it. So um, did you want to give the recap on this one, or did you want
Sure.
me to do it?
Yeah, I can
Go
do it.
for it.
All right. Yeah, guys, this one is Valiant, as we said. This one is a Nog and Jake focused episode, and we start off with the two of them heading to Ferenginar on a runabout. Jake has joined Nog, and Nog is being sent with some sort of message, and Jake is giving him, pointed questions. Oh, you're the only, Ferengi who is in the Federation. Are you going with, an invitation to join the Federation? And Nog, who had told Jake that he wasn't supposed to be coming as a reporter, but as his friend, is angry because Jake then admits that actually, yes, he is trying to get a scoop, a story on what's going on with the Ferengi here, and so he and Jake are kind of at odds because Jake unfortunately lied to Nog about the reasons for his coming along. But before they can really do much else, they come under attack by a Dominion ship, and because they're in a runabout, they are pretty much helpless, and they are about to die when a ship that looks just like the Defiant comes and rescues them. But it turns out it is not the Defiant; it is a ship called the Valiant, and they beam aboard Jake and Nog. And we find out that the crew of the Valiant are members of Red Squad, which, if we remember anything from previous episodes or TNG, those were the cadets, the kind of highest quality, the elite cadets at the academy. It turns out that almost a year ago, about 8, 9 months ago, they were on a training mission on the Valiant when the ship was attacked, and all of the commissioned staff, including the original captain, were all eventually killed in that Dominion attack. The captain, we learn, did live long enough to help get the ship back to working order for the most part, though the ship has never been able to completely repair the warp drive. And so the Red Squad, led by well, he's technically a cadet, but he is now acting captain, Tim Waters. He was given command of the ship by the former captain as he died. Tim Waters is now leading the ship. Instead of returning back to the Federation, he has continued for the last 8 months to try and fulfill the original tactical mission of the ship, which was to gain intelligence on a new Dominion battleship by getting close enough to scan it. However, because the warp drive has never been able to be completely brought back up to full power, they've never been able to complete that mission. So Nog, as someone who has had many experiences on the Defiant, explains how to fix the warp drive. He does break a number of safety protocols to do so, but it's clear that he knows what he's doing. And so Tim Waters, who looks all of 18 or 19 at most, promotes young Nog to uh, chief engineer of the Valiant.
Yeah,
And
lieutenant becomes lieutenant commander and chief engineer.
exactly. So he is, of course, very pleased to have been promoted. He's very pleased with what the mission is. He feels like he's part of a group that he's committed to. However, Jake has been full of reservations. He notices that everyone is very young. Um, he talks with one of the young cadets, Collins, about her life. Asks where she's from. He learns that she's from the moon, or Luna, as some people call it. And she talks about how no one actually calls it the moon or Luna. And later, she privately kind of breaks down a little bit, has an emotional moment, which young Tim Waters, Captain Waters, sees, and noticing her kind of emotional breakdown, basically orders Jake not to talk to her anymore. Um, Nog is able to help the crew figure out how they can now scan the battleship. In order to scan the battleship properly, they have, or actually, they are able to scan the battleship. Excuse me, but instead of taking that information and returning back to the Federation, Waters wants to now attack the ship because he feels they've discovered a fatal flaw in the battleship, and not only could they help bring the end of the war, but they would be able to at least save millions of lives. Instead of just returning and having someone else come out to do the job, we could do it now. And so he convinces the crew through an emotional speech to let's do it now. Nog does bring up the problems that would have to be overcome, meaning mainly that in order to make the weapon, the torpedo, uh, have the type of radiation they need, they would need to manually get close enough to direct the torpedo at the weakened area, which of course puts them into grave danger by getting so close. Jake says, "Hey, my dad, who is Captain Cisco, he runs the Defiant. He knows this ship and its capabilities better than anyone else. He wouldn't do this. This is way beyond the capabilities of the ship and the crew. We should not do this." And of course, he's shouted down because he's not a part of Starfleet. He's not welcome to give his opinion. So he is instead eventually sent to the brig for being causing disturbances on the ship. So the ship attacks this new Dominion uh, battleship, this massive ship that we've never seen before. It's very dangerous, as we mentioned. They have to get close, and they are able to successfully blow up this torpedo on the weakened area. But it is not enough to destroy the ship. It's not effectively damaged in any way. It doesn't seem to be crippled at all. So, in light of that fact, the Valiant is not able to escape and is instead destroyed, killing everyone on the ship. Waters, the rest of the crew. Nog is alive and long enough to say we need to get to escape pods. Orders an abandoned ship. So he and Collins are able to free Jake from the brig. They escape right before the ship explodes, and they are rescued um, by the Defiant. They are, of course, Dr. Bashir is able to heal them. Nog is, of course, greatly distressed by the experience. Collins is, hurt pretty badly, and Nog um, tells Jake, like, if you need to write this story, go ahead and do it. But remember, the only mistake was us blindly following Waters'
Hmm.
disastrous orders. But Collins protests and says that he was a great man. And so Nog says, well, he may have been a hero, he may have been a great man, but in the end, he was a bad captain.
Yeah.
So Nog obviously is pretty torn up by the experience. We don't see any sort of reprimand really given for the experience, but um, yeah, Jake and Nog barely survive. So yeah, a dark episode for sure, but also a pretty. I like this one a lot. This one was definitely something different. It gave us a very unique story. When I first saw the young cadets of Red Squad, I was worried that this was going to be another TNG. They all, like, the crew was somehow de-aged, kind of like in that one episode of TNG. But it was not that. It was Red Squad and all their glory trying to, excuse me, trying to pull off a mission that they weren't technically ready for. They might be brilliant cadets, but they really should have, at least in my opinion, I think it's pretty clear the episode is saying this, they should have returned to Starfleet and allowed the natural processes to continue so that they could join up with ships that were ready to go up against the Defiant in more direct ways, as opposed to trying to challenge the Dominion themselves.
Mhm.
Sorry, I think there's a Defiant just a moment ago. Challenge the Dominion themselves. So yeah, very interesting episode. We'll have to really get into it.
Oh, we are definitely going to. Lots to say here. And first and foremost, I'm glad that you were saying how much you like this episode as well, because the reason this episode stands out to me so much is because it, as a longtime fan and as someone who watched this when I was much younger and I was around, their age when this episode came out.
Mm,
Um, I remember the number of times as a young fan of Star Trek. I remember the number of times I watched any episode and always tried to imagine myself inserted with the crew, or of course the captain myself, and leading my peers. I never imagined myself in the captain's chair and then surrounded by people who were me at 15 and them 45, and they're all taking their cues from me. That would No, of course you're leading people your own age, or
right,
surrounded by people your own age. And
right,
what would you do? And this total belief in, because just because you were right, and just because you were wearing the uniform, and just because you said the right things, and all that stuff, that your mission would turn out, of course, successful. You were the paragon hero, right? You never failed. And
right,
so to watch an episode where you see these people your own age who are struggling with that, and at least initially, especially with Captain Waters here, present themselves in this very kind of quintessential, captain role, right? He's persuasive, he's charming, he seems like he's really carrying out the stuff well. And then we start to see the cracks in the armor there. He's stressed, he's overtired, he's taking stimulants, he's doing all these, kind of, you know, terrible things here,
right,
all for the sake of a mission, all because he believes ultimately that, like I said, that he's the good guy. What they need to do here is of critical importance to all the people who died on the Valiant, to get them to where they are, and then of course to Starfleet at large. That the Dominion is this, imposing monster that only the crew of the Valiant can take down. Again, it's
mm,
that quintessential young fantasy of rising to the occasion, and of
mm,
course, being the hero. And to see them fail so spectacularly, like I was saying earlier before we started the episode, it really highlights, kind of like a smack in the face, a bit of the realism here, that no, you're a kid. You're not going to be able to step into this role. You don't really have the the experience. You may have training, you may know how to fly a ship, and you may know how to punch a few buttons, but you need the experience in order
Hmm.
to, know what to do, when to fight, when to pull
Right.
back, when to run, when to hide, when to do all this, and they don't have it. They have the blinders of youth that stop
Hmm.
them from, really seeing the true consequence of all of their decisions. And again, as I've watched this episode many times, it's only recently in watching it that I really kind of see that. And then, of course, when the real Defiant shows up and the
Hmm.
officers come in, and you know, almost with Jake, with Nog, you breathe a sigh of relief. Oh, thank God the adults showed up, right? Like, it's just like this is what you've been needing the whole time.
Right.
And it's a significant difference.
Right.
And yeah, I really love this episode for that. And I think it's a great one for, you know, um, no matter no matter the age of the people that you're watching with. I think there's a lot of great things you can get out of an episode like this.
Right.
And yeah, I think it's just wonderfully done, surprisingly well done when you're just not expecting it this late in the season.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. The idea that experience teaches you to temper your resolve is so important, and this episode really brings that forward. As I was watching this episode, I was thinking, you're watching these cadets. They are perfectly performing their roles.
Hmm.
They are saying the words right. They are moving properly. They're saluting correctly. Like, in terms of technical prowess, they are it.
Yeah,
And
and they have, just to add real quick, they've also internalized the Starfleet ideals and mantra.
right,
They live and breathe it, and they're chanting it. We're not just Starfleet, we're Red Squad. They
right,
really come to drink the Kool-Aid, as it were, with
yes,
what they're doing here on the Valiant. Go ahead.
right. Yeah, but like what I was thinking of is like a ship crewed by these kids once, like if they had the experience, if they truly were professionals because they had that tempered experience, they would truly be a force to be reckoned with, which is interesting because in truth, what will happen to these cadets if things had progressed normally is they would be separated onto different ships. Some ships would be more high profile, like the Enterprise, and maybe most of them would head that direction. But some of them might be sent to go be with a crew that's kind of lackluster, and like they become like first officer of a lackluster crew. The reason they're able to get to first officer is because they did prove themselves here early on. But instead of my point is like Starfleet is not going to hyper focus their quality cadets into one ship. They're going to try and spread that out across all of their fleet.
You know,
And
that's a good point. I didn't think about, because this is twice now that we've seen Starfleet kind of form these groups. You
right,
mentioned the Next Generation episode with with Wesley Crusher, and it was Nova Squad back
that's
then.
it. Okay, yeah,
And Nova Squad, and while they were high profile cadets, Nova Squad was something that the cadets nominated each other to. And
oh
then
yeah, okay,
once you achieved a certain kind of status, you could be selected for Nova Squad. And then once you were selected for Nova Squad, you really had to perform to maintain it. Red Squad, on the other hand, the difference here is that Red Squad was started by the now, deposed and forgotten Admiral Layton, who was looking for top-notch officers that he could later place in key positions who would obey without question. That was
yeah.
going to be his way of of centralizing power in Starfleet
Yeah, they were
under
mentioned in
his
the
direction.
they were mentioned in the episodes. That character Leighton you just mentioned, that was when we were on Earth trying to stop
During the
Dominion
Paradise Lost
infiltration.
episode, right? And
Yeah,
he was using Red Squad to kind of strike fear in the civilians and in the Federation president in order
right,
to give broad sweeping powers to the Federation, and in particular him and
right.
his personnel he had positioned in key
And Nog
spots.
had mentioned that like they're kind of a secretive group. It's not really clear who's that, which I thought was kind of interesting because that pin they get clearly indicates who's a part of Red Squad, which maybe that's just now how they do it. It's been a
Well,
year
yeah,
or two.
I wondered
Um,
about that too, and I thought that the reason that for the pins was that it was a change to show that Red Squad was different now, because
right,
Leighton had used them as kind of like his own covert ops team, so you weren't supposed to know who was in Red Squad. Like it was a an unofficial secret. Like Nog figured out who people were because of who Nog is, and
right,
he did that. But later on, under the new leader of Red Squad, which we heard about, the now dead Captain Ramirez, he was trying to turn Red Squad into something else, almost like he was trying to remove the stigma of Red Squad and giving them a new focus, a new purpose. And he
right,
had them here on this training vessel to
right,
show that their elite skills and everything else were not going to go to waste. And now they've got an insignia to be proud of. You're not
right,
existing in the shadows anymore. We are marking you as Red Squad. We are saying something about you as Red Squad, and here is our badge of support,
right.
basically.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's kind of what I figured.
It's an ugly
Um,
pin, by the way. Just saying, it's a
well,
terrible design.
isn't it the Star Trek like A or whatever the
The
symbol is
the
like
delta, it's
the
the
delta
delta,
is turned to the
but
side?
it's turned to the side, and then it's like the points on it are elongated, so it
Like
almost
part
looks
of the
like a
star.
needle,
Yes.
and then it's got like the weird, like a, I guess, kind of like a weird oval. It's like a starburst pattern to a certain degree. It's
Right.
not. It's not good. It's
Yeah.
not.
I mean, I liked it fine. I didn't have much of an opinion on it.
And then it has
Um,
like a colored background too. It's like got like a red
I will
background
say
on
it
it. Yeah,
is much. It's more detailed than it has a right to be. That's for sure. For a bunch of cadets who are, basically giving themselves their own elite club, it definitely has way more decoration and nuance to it than, I mean, like literally the pips on the shoulder on the collar have less ostentation than that thing did.
yeah, and like
Um,
the pips are on one side, and then you got this giant thing which had to be poking people in the neck when they
yeah,
wore it. Even if you turn it to the side, it's got to be uncomfortable to have this thing attached to you on the other side.
right,
Which, yeah, I mean, of all the insignias that they've demonstrated in Trek and everything else, never once had an urge to go out and try to find the Red Squad pin. Just not even once. It's
right,
it's not a good, it's not a good design. That's all I'm gonna
right,
say.
yeah. Um, so Vincent asks here in the comments, do we think that Waters is legitly does have a legit drug problem? I would say I don't necessarily think. Well, I think he is developing a legit drug problem. I think he's in the process of developing it.
Yeah,
How much it's like truly a dependency versus like part of me wonders like because this leads directly to something else I wanted to say. I think that Waters is an interesting character because he is the epitome of fake it till you make it. He's a
yeah.
kid. He
Yeah,
is a
he's
kid.
17 years old. He's got a field commission to captain off of the dying words of of Captain Ramirez.
Right.
He is very much trying to fill some very large shoes here, and he's got
Right.
you know not much to fall back on. No real role models that he can actively talk to in
Right.
on this mission here.
And I think he saw like Ramirez or someone else once pop some pills to like maybe help them through a shift. And I think he thinks that he's gonna do this mission and he saw someone pop some pills, so he's gonna see how that works. I don't think he actually needs them. Anyone ever gave them to him? Anyone
I,
said, "Hey, you need these?" I think he's self-medicating because he
yeah,
thinks he'll like be a better captain.
Yeah, so to the question of a legit drug problem, also going to say no. I don't think that he has one. I think that this was something that was, if we're not looking at it in universe, outside of the universe here, I think it was something that was handled poorly. I think there was an attempt to make it seem like this is what the natural progression of a person who is overworked, overtired, overstressed. This was what they would ultimately turn to when when it's a crisis, when it's a critical moment here. And
Right.
this is a person who has constantly been pushed in a particular direction, and he's using the drugs as kind of a crutch. But I just don't think that they really sold us on it. Like, we didn't see, like, if we had seen more of Waters breaking down,
Hmm.
perhaps, and having to rely more and more on drugs to get through, or to, kind of put that visage back up,
Mhm.
because he's, let the mask down in front of his first officer or somebody. We never really see that. We see a couple of times where it's clear he's tired, that he's
Right.
fatigued, but
Right.
it's never enough to really think that he's suffering from something other than tiredness. Like it's not
Yeah.
withdrawal symptoms we're
Right.
seeing, so if they had really kind of done more of that to kind of play that up, then yeah, I would say that this could be leaning more into a legit drug problem. I think that you're right, though. This is more of a guy who is trying to hold on to this image of I'm in command, I'm in
Yes.
control.
Mhm.
This is something that's kind of like an open secret. Like he just casually strolls into the infirmary and takes the pills. He doesn't say anything. He doesn't try to hide it. He's
Right.
just, he's got his back to her, but she knows what's in there. Everybody knows what's in there.
Right.
He doesn't do anything to try to hide it in any way. So I mean, I just feel like this was just not executed well enough to say yes, he has a drug problem, and more like he's stressed, he's overworked,
Yeah.
he needs the relief that according to him, is not coming
I,
from this
I
mission.
I'll put it this way. I don't think he has a drug problem in that he needs the drugs per se. I think he treats them, but they have a placebo effect. They give him a mental feeling of
Yeah,
superiority. I could do this. If I just take
but
the
I
pill, I
can
can do
handle
this.
it. Right, like, it's
Right.
convincing him of his own
Right.
life. I can handle it. And so,
And
yeah, when that question there, so where the drugs weren't affecting his judgment, no. I'm
mhm.
not gonna say the drugs were affecting his judgment. I think that his fear of slipping up is what ultimately costs him here.
Yes.
He was the fear of being seen as anything other than the capable leader he was projecting is what's
Exactly.
affecting him. Again, if we
Yes.
had seen more of him failing, or like, let's say they'd been a moment where he went to go and get one of the pills and they were all gone, or someone had moved him and he flips out, right?
Right.
Where are they? And he's like screaming in the infirmary for them, and then he finally gets some, and instantly, we see him calm down. Then yeah, that would have said
Yeah.
to me drug problem.
Right.
Or when the first officer, comes into the ready room and sees him slumped over the desk, and she tries to, wake him up, and he freaks out on her, and then
Right.
she sees him pop a couple pills, then yeah. But we never really see him have to keep the pills on him or near
Yes.
him, or anything that would have alluded to I can't function without this.
Yes. Yeah.
We never see that.
There's no clear dependency,
Yeah.
as you just mentioned. The only thing we ever get in terms of dependency is that when he does take one of the pills, he seems to relish it. Like he pops it real fast and relish the moment. But I again, my opinion on that is it feels performative because everything the character does is performative. All of the hand slapping, the speeches, the
Yeah.
when he calls Jake in and says, we need our officers to not be caught up in their emotional blah blah blah, like wanting to go home. So can you do this for me? Like, no. If you're a real
Don't be a
captain,
don't be a part of the story, Jake. Just watch it.
yes.
Just write it.
Oh,
I hated that whole speech. Like every
yes.
single bit of that. I just want to be like, it reeked of like school guidance counselor, you know?
Yeah.
Like all he needed
Yeah.
to do was take off the jacket, flip it over his shoulder, and prop his foot up on a chair and say, "Can I rap with you for a second?" It'd have been
Yeah.
classic 90s school special. And I just would have been like, I'm out of here. Just I'm absolutely not having this.
Right, exactly. Yeah, everything is performative on his side, on everything he does, which leads to his hubris. Because here's the thing: he is, as I said, he and everyone else are very good at performing their jobs. They're technically capable of doing a number of things, but when it comes to actual risk, he's never had to risk anything. That let me put it this way: the Kobayashi Maru test is a brilliant idea, the idea that you are going to fail in a test. We are going to make sure you fail so you get the taste of it. What does it feel like to suffer a failure? And this kid obviously never had that chance. So all he can imagine
True.
is a quick test. Every other test he's ever taken in his life, all he had to do was maybe pop a few pills, like every other kid in college these days, to make sure he can stay through and
Which
study.
By the way, quick aside, 24th century, he's popping pills. Get a hypo spray. Quit
Yeah,
popping pills like a peasant and go in there and get yourself a hypo spray. Tap yourself on the arm and go, what are you doing?
he's
You're taking pills?
right.
Really? Come on. Yeah, that
Yeah,
was another mistake. They should have kept true to the times, and he should have
hypo
had his
spray.
own personal hypo spray that maybe he's got to go in there and he's got to, load it up and then do it. Yeah, popping pills makes no sense in
Too
this narrative
modern,
either.
too modern.
Again, it
That's
was
a
it
funny
was it
critique
was
right there.
drug addiction handled poorly. They
Yeah.
wanted us to understand this was a person doing drugs. They wanted that to be the
It's
narrative, but
funny
they
though because the
failed.
hypo spray would have been so clearly. I don't know. Maybe it's the visual of like it
It
almost looks like a
is.
needle, so it's a little
It
too on the nose. Maybe I don't know.
Oh, well, I could see that. Maybe they were like, "Oh, we don't want people to think he's doing 24th century heroin," so
That'd be
so
something.
no
Yes.
no
At that point,
hypos.
I would say he's addicted. Yes, he's doing heroin. Yes, he's
See,
woohoo.
exactly. I think it would have sold it a little bit better
Yeah.
if we're watching him sneak in
Yeah.
an
If he
illicit
slapped his face a
vial,
little bit.
right?
Yeah.
Or he's got because normally we see him do it like on the arm or the neck or whatever, and he's got like a secret spot he's hitting it with, that's got a little
Yeah.
bruised area or something. I don't know.
Or the
Make it a
first
little extra.
officer has been helping him out. Like when Jake walks in, she was behind the desk helping him, do another hit real quick or something.
Yeah,
Yeah, that would have been definitely more in the yes, he is
something. Yeah.
addicted.
But I
But
think that it was the odd juxtaposition of we want to tell a story about drug addiction, but we also need to focus this on, to make sure that we understand that this is drug addiction. It's the 90s. So, what's the common way people are taking drugs these days in the 90s? Prescription pills were on the rise. So, they tried to use that, but then they failed to really sell it otherwise. Because, again, we never see him go through a period of withdrawal. We
mhm,
never see him like talk about how, oh, I use them, but we never heard the justification speech, right? Oh, I do use them, but I've got this under control. I'm
right.
just doing this until we get through the mission, and after that everything will go back to normal and we won't have to worry about this, and I won't, like, we never hear any of those things. This episode, as we've talked about with others, needs to be longer. We should have
Yeah.
seen more of this, maybe
This would have
half a
been
season of
yeah.
dealing with Red Squad. Like, we've got the Defiant and Cisco and them trying to do their own thing, and then over here, kind of lost behind enemy lines, is this ship trying to make it back, and they're struggling. But unfortunately, we couldn't really do that because there was another ship that was lost elsewhere and trying to
Mhm.
make its way back home, and they weren't about to have two
Yeah.
shows about the same thing.
Yeah, no,
So,
definitely. This show, I will say, I do feel like this episode was perfectly timed. I think that the pacing was correct, the
mhm.
storytelling was correct. It didn't require a second episode in terms of like getting through the storytelling as much as these characters and the situation was enough that it would have been great to just have more of it.
Yeah,
Um,
okay, I'll give you that. Yeah,
yeah,
some
like
ongoing stories with the Valiant and their odd crew of teenagers.
yeah, like the easiest way for this episode to have naturally been given more story to make it fit into two parts is Jake and Nog are missing and Cisco is upset and where are they and they're searching like until Cisco and the crew come and rescue them doesn't at ever any point seem like they are aware that Jake and Nog are missing, but they seem to have been on the ship for at least several days if
Yeah.
not a week or so. So it would seem reasonable that they would be aware of them being missing by the time to find that rescues them. But
Yeah, I almost feel like it was like at least 2 weeks because I mean Jake's got time to kind of build some rapport there. People get
yeah,
used to him walking around and stuff. I mean, I just feel like there was a little bit more than just a week, 5 days of them being there.
yeah,
Nog has risen in importance. He solved a lot of issues technically on
yes,
the ship.
right,
Like he also has really kind of bought into being a part of Red Squad and being
yeah,
on this crew.
yeah,
So, I mean, yeah, it feels like he was a bit quick on the take on that, but it also seems like he's had to live with it for a little while too, and he's become comfortable
yeah.
here. So, yeah,
Um, Turning from Nog for a quick moment, I just want to say Nog's character growth from season one has been great. I love the idea that his character is of every other character on the show, he has truly had the most change, which is great. He's had a character journey. His conflict with Jake makes sense. Like, who are you to use me? You lied to me. this has been a conflict we've seen between them before. Of Jake is kind of easygoing and doesn't seem to really need to do anything with his life, and that is a question that's kind of put to Jake. You didn't Water says you didn't follow in your father's footsteps, which is obviously a slight put down. We're the elite of the elite. Your dad is supposed to be an elite, and yet you didn't cut it. Like, what's going on?
Yeah, yeah, like,
um
what's yeah, yeah, you're right, you know?
and that moment where Jake says, "My dad has run, we wouldn't do this mission." Like, it falls so flat because Jake has never run a mission. He's never been there when his dad gave a speech about preparedness, because he's not a part of the military arm of the Federation in any capacity. Now, I do want to say, what I really would have loved, though, is for Jake to have stepped up and said, "My dad's leadership style is very different from this, this acting version. This you're trying to make something happen here, Waters. You aren't really a captain. Whatever battlefield promotion you had was never intended to be anything more than, there's no one else left. Go home, and you have been faking it for 8 months." For example, like, I wish he had pushed back on the scene where they tell him, don't try and talk to the crew because that can disturb their emotions. He should have pushed back, maybe not in that scene, but at some point, being like, "I've seen my father become close with everyone in his crew. He doesn't, like, you're clearly cutting yourself off from members of the crew in order to maintain some sort of rigid discipline structure. You guys are clearly stressed out, 8+ months out, and you haven't done anything, and you clearly need to talk to someone and get some feedback." Like, I wish Jake had had a moment of, like, not the "this mission is too ridiculous, who is he to say that," but something to the effect of, like, "I've seen what my father has done to run a station, to connect with his people, and I sense a flaw here, not because I personally have done what my father has done, but because I've watched my father work, and I sense a problem amongst this crew." I wish
And
that scene had happened. That would have been
And
great.
and so you're absolutely right, and that was kind of my problem with Jake in this episode, is because Jake doesn't necessarily try to empathize with him on that level. He tries to use his father's clout as his own. He's like, even when he starts talking and when they're all gathered there, he's like, "You all know who my father is," and he says it with this kind of braggadocious nature here. Like, it's
Mhm.
supposed to now give credit to everything he's getting ready to say afterwards. But Jake is not an officer. Jake has never gone to Starfleet Academy. As far as we know, he's never even taken the cadet test to see if he would get in.
Mhm.
So he is really just trying to be like, because my dad is who my dad is, you
Right.
guys should now take everything I say as truth, because he's Ben Cisco and I'm his son. He's got no other merit. He's got no other offer here, and I think that's kind of a failing on Jake's part, because what he should have been able to do was say, yeah, like, that's my dad, and I know my father, and in my opinion, I know that he would never do something like this.
Right.
And instead, you're missing out because, like, like, maybe guide them that way. Be like, one of the things people idolize my father for, or look to my father for, is the fact that he works well with his team, but he also gauges his team. He's not going to
Yes.
put them into a bad situation that they aren't ready for. That's
Right.
why he's such a good leader, because he
Exactly.
takes care of his people. Jake
Right.
doesn't do that. He always is trying to brag and use his father to kind of bash them into doing what he wants, and it fails every time. And
Right.
rather than recognizing he needs to take a new tack with them, he just becomes a little bit more sullen and wants to dig in, and then wants to kind of make things worse for himself, really, which then also makes things worse for Nog, because as much as Nog is fitting in, Jake is always there to kind of undermine whatever Nog is doing. And even in that situation, Jake should have really been trying to help Nog to kind of distinguish himself and keep himself separate from the rest of Red Squad. But he was
Yeah.
pushing him further and further into their camp by being like, "Well, my dad says, well, my
Yeah.
dad says, well, my dad would never." But so what? Like, he
Right.
is a Jake is an officer in his own right.
Right.
He's got to make his own decisions. You should have been standing with him as his friend, not as,
As
you
Nob's
know,
friend, yeah.
yeah, you should have been his friend and potential, counsel, not standing on him while he's trying to, move up here and distinguish himself.
Right. I also think that Jake what I would love for Jake to do, he hasn't done it yet, I don't feel in any clear way, and I feel like this episode could have been the moment, is for Jake to really express why it was he chose not to follow in his father's footsteps. Why hasn't Jake done what his dad is doing? Because you feel like he would naturally get a lot of leadership from his dad, etc., etc. And
You're right.
I feel like Jake could legitimately say, I've seen the sacrifices my father's had to make on behalf of the Federation, myself, the family. And as much as I admire my father and would love to think that I could do what he does, I just don't want to have to sacrifice those things. I do want to. I honor my father by not having to sacrifice those things. He sacrificed them in ways that gave me the things that I have, and I am honoring him by not picking up that burden all over
It's true.
again. He has picked it up and it's his, and I am now living my own life, and I respect him for what he's done for me. Like I wish he had said something like that. Like
It's
I,
true. You're
I,
you're
I, I, I have,
absolutely right.
I have insights into my father and how his leadership style, so he could critique other people, saying, "I think you're like he could say to Waters, he could say to him, you are probably a uh, brilliant in many ways, and you could come up with a strategy that would work. That's not the question. You need to even captains have to run their missions by the admirals. You aren't doing that. You in order to prove yourself, you have
And
removed yourself from the chain of command, and that is a flaw. Like anyway,
And
sorry, go ahead.
also captains talk with their crew members
Yes,
before they finally come down on the decision. What we
right,
see a lot of Waters here is Waters just kind of making decisions. We never see him in any kind of council with his first officer or with really any of the other officers. He just kind of like is saying, "We're sticking to this plan. This is our mission. This is all that matters." You
right,
don't see any kind of consideration, which again, this is something that we would typically see in a leader with more experience, not just technical expertise, but experience. Think of all of the captains that we have witnessed so far.
mhm,
Picard, Kirk, Cisco, Janeway, all of them have people that they will discuss the matter with before ultimately making the final decision. They
right,
never just come out and say, "This is it."
right,
They may start a little bit that way, but then they go through the process of talking about it, breaking it down, tweaking it a bit. And then once the decision is finally made, the crew then goes into support mode and doing their utmost to carry out said decision or plan. We
right,
never see that with Waters here at all. And we kind of are given the explanation of why we don't see it as this was the last mission the crew was on before Ramirez was killed. And
right,
so now we are going to just complete the mission. And
right,
then we see him really flip that later on when he's like, okay, we've officially completed the mission. We've made the scans. That's all you're supposed to do. Make
hmm
the scans. But our scans have revealed a weakness. We now have an opportunity to take the mission further and do this thing that no one else has done.
right,
He wasn't ready for that. He simply
yeah,
wasn't ready for that. And he took it too far. And
yeah,
that's why they fail.
right, yeah. Because what's interesting, what I really liked about the end of the episode is I thought that their mission was going to somehow fail before they ever got close enough to do any damage to the ship, to the Dominion ship. I thought, well, for one thing, they never cloak. It's only the Defiant that's able to cloak, I
So
guess.
yes, the Defiant is the only ship that has a cloaking device. It was a special treaty deal with the Romulans that gave
True.
them just one cloak. It wasn't for the whole Defiant line, the
Right.
Defiant class ships, just that one. Got
Okay.
it.
Because obviously, if they had the cloaking device, it would have made a lot of sense. You'll get close. Maybe they can get close enough to even do this mission of they have to like you'll be very the precision required to hit the specific area. But they obviously don't have that, so they have to do it the hard way of revealing themselves and get close as they can. Um, my point that I thought was really interesting is I thought like I figured the Defiant would come save them at some point, but I thought they were gonna save them and like it'd be rah 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 like oh the
I
cadets were
Yeah,
almost successful, but something pushed them back, and then the Defiant comes in and they say,
yeah.
"Oh, we know how
I
to defeat the ship," and they blow it up, and
I
yay!
I, I like that because I thought the same thing that we would have seen the Valiant attack this massive ship. You think they're going to win. You see that explosion, but then the ship makes it through the explosion, and now they're just getting beat up left, right, and center. And then all of a sudden, the infamous the scan alarm goes off, and they're saying another ship is coming in. Who
Right,
is it? And it's a
the
Defiant that
Defiant, yeah,
swoops in, and we see crazy corkscrew barrel rolls and phasers firing, and then boom, and you're sitting there watching and go, and that's how the pros do it.
yeah, exactly,
Sit down, kids.
yeah,
Get
yeah,
the
that's
get the
exactly
B
right.
team, get the B team off the field. Let the pros do the job.
Yeah. And then Cisco can give Waters a talking down of you might have had a great strategy, but you weren't yet ready to perform it, and you nearly lost your ship, and you need to go still study. Like that's how I expected it to go. So the fact that they were successful, they did get close enough and destroyed the thing they wanted to destroy, and it didn't work. I love the idea that the Dominion had intentionally placed a false uh, weak point. Like it's a false weak point that they were intending for someone to come attack, which would then draw in like a
Which
Valiant.
is totally in keeping with the Defiant, or not the Defiant,
Yeah,
the Dominion, feeding out false information, laying
right,
out little traps, tricks, booby traps, which again highlights the fact that you need experience before you
right,
act. Experience would have tempered that. If
right,
Worf had been there, Jadzia had been there, someone else who had more experience, they probably would have said, "Hey, we're aware of this, but it seems too good to be true. Let's formulate a couple of other plans in case this turns out to be false and doesn't work." But
right,
Waters and the Valiant really kind of, not even kind of, they really commit to this thing, and
right,
it's all our hopes are riding on getting super close and firing these torpedoes and making this thing happen, and
right.
it fails.
Yeah, yeah. That moment where they look into the screen and they think they're successful and they start
All
kind of
the
cheering.
explosions and everybody's like,
Yeah,
"Yeah!"
like
And then the ship just is
that's
like,
but
"Still
it
here."
but it's also an amateurish response. You
Mhm.
you you might have a quiet moment as a professional of like yes, but you keep working. You're not done. What if a reinforcement comes out of somewhere and you didn't expect them? Um, so
It
I just
reminded me of all those times in like football games where you see like the Hail Mary throw and everybody's cheering, thinking it's about to be, caught and game over, and you've made the heroic catch or whatever, only to see it intercepted and run all the way back. Like that's what that was. Like the
yeah,
elation in the moment, and then the realization, and
yeah,
all your hopes coming down, and
crashing down.
you got
Oh
to
yeah,
watch. Yeah, yeah, that
yeah.
was what that was.
And that's why that episode is why this episode is so great because as you said when we were starting this episode our recording, this is a dark episode. There is no happy ending. Jake
Mm.
and Nogger successfully saved. I would say I wish more of the escape pods were successfully launched. I feel like the only one being
Yeah.
successful was Jake and Nog. If it's just a little too on point, let's save a few more people. Let's have a sick bay. Let's have the
Well,
Defiant like overwhelmed with cadets in sick bay for something. Like just make it clear like how disastrous it was. Not because they're all dead, but because we see so many hurt kids or something. But maybe that's
well,
again too on point. Who knows?
well, I think that that was also part of the point in which we see the end of Red Squad. So now this is, like I said, this is twice that Starfleet has kind of backed these child-led programs from Nova Squad, now Red Squad, and we've seen them both really kind of fail spectacularly. Despite the high-achieving students that they had in both programs, they just they have yet they to produce a stable, qualified, top-performing officer. And it's just kind of showing that these kind of clandestine groups that work so much of we're in the shadows, and you're handpicked, and kind of really feeding them this line of just how talented and special you are and compared to all the other cadets,
Right.
it really kind of messes these people up and ultimately seems to set them up for failure. So we've now seen the literal killing of Red Squad, and
Yeah.
the only one who's left is this deeply traumatized chief,
Yeah.
you
This
know,
girl. Yeah.
and then that's it. That's it, you know.
Now, in my recap, was it her that said, or was it Nog that said that we failed him?
She
That
says it.
she
She's
said it.
laying in the bio bed, and Nog and Jake are sitting next to each other, and they are talking about, Waters and what an ineffective leader he was, and how he led them over a cliff and everything else. And then she sits up, and or not, she tries to sit up, and she's
Right.
just like, "No, he was a great man, and if he failed, it's because we failed him."
Right.
And Nog comes over to her and says that, yeah, he may have been a good man, but he was a bad captain,
Yes.
and that's how it
And
ends.
that's I love that line because it really shows you that there's something that has to be forged to make a captain. Like Picard is great in part because we know that he's been a captain for a while. We had that
That is
episode
something that
where
I'm so glad you brought that up because that is something that is hit upon in almost every single iteration of Trek.
yeah,
Is that not everybody can be a captain?
yes.
Just go ahead.
Well, and because TNG hits it on the head. Literally, there's an episode where Q, because I think it's season 7, right, takes him back to when he was in a cadet himself, and he got into a
Oh, and
bar
he got
fight.
stabbed in the chest and got the fake heart.
Yeah, yeah, and so like how
Tapestry. That's the
yeah,
episode.
Picard is like
Season 6.
worried that if he if he's too reckless, and so Q basically shows him that if he had gone down a less reckless path, if he was too cautious, he would have been a nothing kind of person, a kind of a wishy-washy individual. And so the person who we see as Captain Picard now is in part the same man who made foolish choices as a cadet. And so I love that idea that like this Waters kid could have been great. I mean, I think he is too performative. Like for example, the way he pats people on the back and like he acts like he is something. Man, I tell you what, like if I had been Jake, and that's it's the whole idea, of course, is like he's too paternalistic for a kid who's not any older than anybody else. Um, but like that stuff just rubs me the wrong way in my own life when stuff like that happens. And like for Picard, you never feel like, or even Cisco, you never feel like they are being paternalistic or talking down to you. They might have paternalistic elements to them.
But that
We
also
definitely
comes with the wisdom of experience and
exactly,
qualified leadership.
and it's why we
Um,
also love them as characters, is
yeah,
because whatever. Like I think the reason Picard stands out is because he doesn't have his own children, but he definitely has a such a respectful, authoritative, spirit about him that it has a paternalistic feel, and
yeah.
that just authoritative stance. Well, as Cisco, he's not as authoritative like Picard is, but he's got that that emotional
I
connectability.
I've
Yeah.
always looked at them as Picard is kind of like your favorite teacher, your favorite professor that beyond just doing well in their class, you wanted them to be proud of you. Like even to the
Yes.
point of later on in life, you'd reach back out to them and like say,
100%.
because of you,
Yes.
I did this, right?
Right. Yes. That's
Whereas
exactly right.
whereas Cisco is more like he's that dad. He's like almost everyone's dad. Like, you
Yes.
have your friends, you have your father, of course, but then you might even out of your circle of friends, there's probably the one dad that was like just seemed to really get it more than the others.
Yeah.
And so he's the one that you want to be proud of you in a more personal way. Like you have developed into a better person, a better man because of them and because of their influence. That's how I've always separated the two out because yeah, Cisco just has a more personal kind of hands-on feel versus Picard is more like yeah, you're not seeing him that often. And you do
Yeah.
want him to still be proud of you.
Yes. Yeah, I like that analogy quite a bit. That works perfectly for both of them. And so I guess I just wonder, like, did this Waters kid? I like.
Our
I like
problem
it.
with Waters is we don't see the influence that Captain Ramirez had on him because we don't know
Yeah,
Captain Ramirez. We don't know the style that Captain Ramirez,
was
taught
imparting.
him under,
Yeah,
so we don't really know. He is initially the way that he's presented, it's kind of an odd amalgamation of like, all Kirk, Cisco, Picard, like it's all kind of in there. He's kind of forceful, but he is very charming. He's got that kind of, you know, a bit of a moral self-righteousness about him, but he doesn't have any of the weight that those things need to carry them off well, because again, he doesn't have the experience to do it. So
right,
it's just odd to watch because while you can identify it and you understand what it is he's trying to do, you also see that he didn't earn it,
right.
and so it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Now,
Sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
no, I will say here that I feel like when we talk a lot about Nog and his development, one of the things that is also kind of troubling here is that we're watching Jake's development as well, and what we see is that Jake, to a certain degree, seems to have an issue with the shift in how Jake and Nog are viewed, and by that I mean like Nog is becoming more of you know he's his own person, he's his own man, he's not existing in the shadow of anybody.
Hmm.
And for a long time Jake has always been kind of the one that has taught Nog, has guided Nog, and now a lot of that is kind of stripping away. Nog is stepping out, making his own moves, doing his own thing here, and Jake doesn't seem to be handling it well. I wouldn't necessarily say that he's jealous, but it's very clear in some of their interactions that he doesn't like the fact that Nog doesn't listen to him as much or at all. And their blow up when he's telling Jake how he doesn't get it and he doesn't understand. I felt like that was a necessary scene because it does seem like Jake was just kind of like, you're being an idiot. Nog, do as I say, like you always
Right.
have, and we'll move on from here.
Hmm.
And Nog is trying to say, no, like I'm not being an idiot. There is something to this,
Right.
and you're dismissing it because it's not coming from your dad. If it was
Right.
coming from your dad, you would blindly accept, but because it's not him, you're wanting to just dismiss like crazy, which is terrible.
Yeah. Yeah. The dynamic that Jake and Nog have again is like, the fact that Nog has grown as a character, while Jake has, as I think said before in previous episodes, he is kind of stagnant a little bit. I mean, the idea that he's a writer, but he's having to make do now as a journalist, um, is just interesting. And I again, the reason I want him to say why he didn't follow his dad to the academy into Starfleet is in part to kind of justify why he's a
Yeah, 'cause
journalist.
you're right, we never hear that. We never hear him say why he chose to do something different,
Yeah,
and it's not, I guess you could argue that he doesn't necessarily have to, but considering the world that we're supposed to be a part of here and everything else that's going on, it just doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense that he doesn't at least try it. And
right.
maybe they were trying not to have him go down that road of signing up for the academy and being a cadet and then ultimately dropping out of it and doing something else because we already saw that with
Yeah,
Wesley, and so
yeah.
they didn't want a repeat of
We had
Wesley, you
Anthony
know.
Wesley all over again. That's true. And so I'm part of me is glad that they chose something different, but it is interesting. I guess it's a question that in real life, military, kids have to ask for themselves to, do I follow my parents' footsteps? Do I do my own thing? And I feel like Star Trek, because it's so 24/7, these lives that they lead, whether you're on a starship that goes around like the Enterprise or living on a space station like Deep Space Nine, it almost feels natural. Like that's of course what you do because your life has already been so caught up in it. So I just like the idea. I like the idea that Jake, like if we were to explain why he does what he does, he is someone who is trying to put a different look, a different perspective on what he's seeing. He doesn't want to look at Bejor through the eye of a Federation military person. He's trying to connect on an emotional level with people. I wish that's what he had done more of that. Like when he talks with the
Yeah,
girl.
that's a good point. Like Jake is a great way. He would have been a great way for us to explore the civilian side of
Right.
Federation and Starfleet life. Like, what
Yes.
would that be like for a person who you're not in Starfleet, but you're still directly influenced by it?
Right.
You go to San Francisco, there's Starfleet headquarters, there's bases everywhere. Your father's in it, you live on the bases. What's civilian life like for a person that's so inundated with Starfleet?
Yeah. Yeah. Like when we don't see Jake for episodes at a time now, I wish the story was kind of like, well, he's on Bayshore exploring.
Yeah,
He is
he's
he is like
yeah,
the
yeah,
correspondent, and he might be associated with some sort of newspaper or news organization, but
yeah.
like these, like I love to hear from Cisco that he's hearing that his son is like having his own following. The the the
The
the the
emissary's son.
yeah, the emissary's son is creating his own following, and like Jake comes back to the station, he's like, Dad, I'm sorry, like something happened and like I need your help because like someone thought I was making some sort of religious comment and I was just trying to do my job, and I don't know. Like right now I feel like his character.
Or not even, it doesn't necessarily have to be like he gets involved with the religious aspect of Bajor, but what if he goes to Bajor and works he clerks in the Vedic assembly for a
Yeah.
while,
Yeah.
or he goes to Vulcan and does some studies there for a bit, and kind of the back and forth schlep to Earth from the station, and he's talking about booking passage. He's not on, a direct flight on the Defiant. He's on a roundabout freighter that's got like 13 stops to make
Right.
before it hits Earth. And
Right.
so maybe instead of going all the way to Earth, he gets off and has a little adventure on Rigel 7 or something. I don't know. Just
Yeah.
anything that would have shown a different aspect of life
So let's say,
outside of the Federation.
so I'm just trying to like think up stuff here. Like let's
Jake
say
the
that Jake
influencer.
let's say excuse me. Let's say that Jake went to Bajor and like the earrings are supposed to be about your house, right? You're the house of whatever. Like, do you think it would be legitimate for an outsider, a non-Bajoran, to ever like have their own? Like, I'm now saying I'm from the house of Cisco, and
Well, I
uh,
would imagine that if, let's say, an off-world or outsider, whatever, married into a family, they'd probably get one that was a part of whatever family they married into.
right.
But are you talking about like him coming up and being like, "Well, my dad is the emissary. Is there a symbol for the emissary?" And then have them fashion an earring for him to wear that's the symbol of the emissary?
Well, I'm just thinking like if he has been living with like if this is season 6, so 6 years or so with the Bajorans. Let's say he is like I'm just proposing ideas. We're well beyond our episode at this point. Just
Hmm.
talking. Like let's say this like there's some sort of storyline where he decides to go down to Bajor and he is going to be some sort of on the ground reporter to introduce Bajor to the rest of the Federation. Some sort of I've lived here amongst
Hmm.
them for a number of years because of because of my time in the Federation, and now I am going to be the reporter on Bajor about a number of things. Now, of course, the problem I guess right now is that with the war going on, he wants to be where the war stuff is happening, so that maybe distracts him. But anyway, let's say he just goes down to the planet and he's trying to like kind of live amongst the Bajorans. Do you think that he could assimilate in some ways to the Bajorans, like with an earring, or is he kind of still always an
No,
outsider?
to me, he would always be an outsider, but not for anything like negative, I guess.
Sure.
But it's more, his name is Jake Sisko. Everybody's going to hear Cisco and know he's got some association with Ben, the emissary.
Right.
And that's going to be the first question anybody asks as soon as they see him. Are you a part of the emissary? His family something, which, as we know, Jake likes to brag. He's quite proud of the fact that his dad is Ben Cisco. So he's not going to shy away from it at all, which, is great on the one hand. But when it comes to, is he going to have to really struggle to assimilate into this culture that, by all appearances, kind of worships his father? Absolutely not. He's not going to
No.
have those kind of struggles whatsoever. Now, if he went down there under an assumed name and was trying to insert himself and all that, that would give him a struggle only up until someone figured out who he was. And then again, it all drops away. And I can't
Right.
imagine him having much success on Bajor with hiding who he is when his father is literally everywhere,
Right.
you know? So he would have to go somewhere else where that Cisco name wasn't quite so influential.
Right. Yeah, no, it definitely makes sense that that would interfere with his, life on Bajor if he did something. I guess I just like the idea that I don't know, like he is
He should go
doing.
somewhere where it doesn't matter, but it's still
Yeah,
important. Like he should go to he should
yeah,
go to Earth. What's
yeah.
life like on Earth? I mean, Earth has had a couple of scares now. The
Well,
whole
that's what.
Paradise Lost thing. Um,
Well, that's what I
um,
what I mean though is like if the idea of Bajor, if Bajor, like Dr. Bashir said in episode one, is like the frontier.
the frontier, the
um,
wilderness.
I just feel like it would just be more exciting for, and because he would be close to his father to be on Bajor. Um, it's like the idea of him traveling around and telling Bajoran stories. He's introducing uh, something unique to the Bajoran culture as this reporter, an outsider of sorts. But and like maybe he gets a Bajoran girlfriend and he gets engaged and he has a
I
wife
was
and
saying that would be the thing. Like I could see him going there, and again, he's not going to be able to escape his name. He maybe they sent him down at an age where he could have enrolled in a Bajoran college or trade school or something like that, or took
right,
up a job on some kind of Bajoran correspondence, Bajoran news, something. And while he's there and living there and working there and whatever else, he meets someone and they kind of go from there. And then before you know it, he's coming back onto the station to introduce his dad to his fiance.
right,
Maybe him and Marta met
finally
up
worked out.
again on Bajor and they worked it out. And now he's back with Marta and they're engaged. And how great would that have been for him to walk through one of the airlocks and stepped onto the promenade. Haven't seen Jake in 5 years. He walks on. He's got like the full beard, bald head, pulling behind him a very pregnant Marta, talking about dad. I
He
mean,
is
that
so
would have been
concerned.
hilarious, right?
Oh man,
That would have been hilarious.
it'd be fantastic. It was what it would be. Oh man, I just what I'm getting at is like this episode was great and it would have lent itself to more like if we had made a second episode with it, there is so much there, so much potential that it really could have been great. Like let's say the finale of part 1 was the announcement of we're going to go attack the ship. We're not going to just scan it. We're going to go or we did scan it. Like that was the climactic moment. We had to get close enough to scan it and they didn't see us, but now we're going to double down. And then the next episode is them preparing for this, actual attack. I don't know. It's maybe that would undermine this episode as it is, like to draw it out too much. You'd really have to add a lot of content, another 40
Yeah.
plus minutes.
Like I said, you
Um,
would you would have needed another episode.
yeah. I
So
don't know. This episode was just a fascinating perspective on Jake and Nog and leadership and the Federation. Like, for example, when Ramirez died, I think it was a man. When he died, I imagine either he told Waters go back, or he assumed that by passing on the torch, he was basically saying go back. Like you're cadets, I don't assume that you actually are ready and need to go perform this mission. Go return to the Federation, return the ship to the Federation, and and reintroduce yourselves into the Federation Academy and society in order to prepare for the next thing. And so man, the idea
yeah,
that we didn't see Ramirez. Did Ramirez put it on Waters a bit? Like we're so close to completing the mission. I leave it to you. If he had put that burden on Waters, that would have given us a chance to empathize with him and his choices. But
yeah,
we don't see that, so all we know is that he seems to be acting a bit rogue, which, as far as we can tell, is just him being rogue. That's just kind of who he is. Um, trying to prove himself. But I don't know. Maybe it's fun to just leave it as a question. We don't know. We don't know
Well,
all the motivations.
well, and I know we're already past our time, but I mean, I still feel like there's many people that we didn't really get to discuss, like the first officer, Karen.
Yeah, she looks.
Officer Karen, like they couldn't have hit the nail on the head 30 years later. It was perfect.
Was her
And
name
she's
Karen?
just,
Did I miss
yeah,
that?
that's her name. She is
Oh man,
First Officer Karen Ferris is her name, and
man.
she is awful. And it's just
Yeah.
like, why did they, I mean, she just they got someone to play that part of, well, you know, the bitch quite quite well. And I
Well,
mean,
it's
it's just
funny
like
because
that wasn't
her
necessary, but yeah,
hair, her hair, and her stance, and of course the red of her suit, of course, immediately for me at least, called to mind Kira, and she came off as like the immature, yeah, kind of bitchy kid. Again, like these kids are play acting. They are play acting the roles that they believe they've been assigned. Um, when she calls in Jake, because she's the one who first gives Jake a dressing down for talking with the chief, um, until the captain, good cop, bad cop, the captain comes in as the good cop. Oh, you shouldn't be a part of the story you're telling. Oh, blah blah blah. Um,
yeah.
yeah,
And she's all in, Jake's face. I don't remember anyone asking you to come to the bridge. And like,
yeah,
just everything she does is to kind of be like this very stern, dressing down of Jake, or even Nog at first. She's looking down on Nog, the Ferengi who's telling them how to fix their ship. And it's not until, Waters kind of signs off on him that he just that she just kind of gives in a little bit, but she never really lets up um, from that very severe um, mindset.
right, yeah, and she's like the last to die too. She is as the ship goes down, basically,
Yeah, they all die. Pretty much everybody dies on the Valiant except for the petty officer. What was her name? Dorian. Yeah,
something like
looking
that.
at it right now. She's the only one that lives. Everybody else dies.
Right.
Even as mentioned earlier in our convo here, what was his name? The helmsman, Shepard, who we
I
first
forget.
see in the Paradise Lost episode, who we then later see as the helmsman here in Valiant. He dies. They all die. Like I said,
Oh.
it's a massacre of Red Squad. They're done.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess if we were to draw out the episode into a two-parter, like you could just introduce more of this crew. How many of them are just kind of going along to get along? This is kind of how they've always lived life. They're very capable of doing their job, but they don't question orders. Um, I don't know. You really there's so much potential to mine here. So it's sad that it's only a one episode story, but it was a perfectly well told one. I mean, if there are any critiques to make, is that we could have had more. So
Yeah.
not that they did something wrong.
Well, I think that's about it for this episode. I think we can really talk. Well, we probably could talk
Yeah.
about more.
I don't think they mentioned where O'Brien was this episode,
O'Brien is
but
not mentioned or seen in this episode, I believe. So
I assume he's on Earth
well,
visiting Keiko
about time he went to her.
because we should say that he was absent because we know at the beginning of the episode Quark is running his bar and the dispenser replicator is down, and he would tell O'Brien to tell Rom to tell Nog to come fix it, and turns out Dax comes to fix it, and Odo, when he hears that Quark is lamenting Dax doing the job, like this is below her, Odo very aggressively insinuates, "Oh, you're in love with her," which is kind of funny because of his own personal um, maturity over the question of love. And Quark, I honestly, I mean, I think he's always been attracted to Dax in a kind of, well, frankly, sensual sense. He's attracted to her physically, and she's also very intelligent, and so he likes the idea of Dax as a someone to kind of conquer. But he's not. I wouldn't say he's in love with Dax, not in the romantic sense, at least. That makes sense.
Mm, yeah, I think it's a little of both.
Yeah.
I think he's kind of got, yeah, I think the lustful crush has kind of matured over time into something a little more. So, but this is also the problem with pretty much any and all Trek under the infamous Rick Berman. The expression of love, infatuation, sexual attraction, and so forth is never handled well. Has not been handled well at all. So we got kind of got to give those guys a collective pass, because if you focus on it too hard, you kind of realize everybody needed to be sent to horny jail, basically. Real quick, an off-topic question was asked about if Star Trek has any Christmas episodes. I was sitting here trying to think and kind of like just fast track through all the episodes of Trek I've ever seen, and my answer is going to be no. There are no official Christmas episodes. So, to explain a little bit further, if you are looking for an episode that is Christmas themed, has Christmas elements, has a
Christmas
trees,
message.
whatever. Yeah, Christmas message. There isn't one. If you are talking about episodes where certain things that we associate with Christmas are seen in them, like when Data played Ebenezer Scrooge on one episode of Next Generation, there's stuff like that. The movie Star Trek Generations features a Christmas sequence where Picard is at home with his family celebrating Christmas. There's stuff like that, but there's not anything where the episode itself is about Christmas or the Christmas holiday or really any holiday. I can't think of there being a single episode that's like about any you know Hanukkah, Fourth of July, Arbor Day. Like there's nothing there. For the most part, I feel like they try to stay away from those things just because they want the show to be as accessible as possible, and those are not always things that are celebrated everywhere. And also, it stops from having to worry about putting any kind of significant date on the show because you never know when something may or may not still be recognized or celebrated or whatever. So by not fixing those things in the show, you also don't fix the show itself at any particular point in time. But if you're interested, you could kind of do like we talked about Tapestry earlier. That can kind of be seen as a rip on, a Christmas theme with like It's a Beautiful Life, which is a classic
Yeah.
Christmas movie.
If you were to review your
Um,
life and you weren't there, kind of thing.
right.
Yeah.
You know, you could look at
Q could totally put on a ghostly outfit, 1800s England
yeah.
outfit. He would be so happy to do
Oh yeah.
that.
I'm trying to think of some other episodes. I know that not Strange New Worlds, I'm sorry, Discovery does an episode where they do talk a lot about religion and Christianity, and it takes place partially in a church. I think that's called New Eden, and it's in the second season. And it does kind of have a wintry, Christmassy vibe to it as well. And one of the best episodes of Enterprise also kind of gives you that more rustic feel to it that we associate with around the winter seasons. It's called Carbon Creek. I checked that one out just because it's a great episode, great storytelling there for early Trek. But that's kind of about it. Oh, there is an episode where Voyager gets turned into a Christmas ornament. It's like fixed to a tree, thanks to Q. You know, so
Of course, Q. Of
yeah,
course.
Q's involved. They're attached to a tree. There you go. But that's about it. Like that's as close as we get really to Christmas. And again, nothing that's specifically about Christmas or any of that stuff. So,
Gotcha.
oh yeah, that's right. The Gratitude Festival from the episode Fascination. I always took that as a more like a New Year's episode because it's all about the Bajoran Renewal Festival, and you got the renewal scrolls, and you got to burn them, and so you kind of like you're writing down your resolutions, then you burn them and whatever. I always took it as that kind of thing, not necessarily Christmas, but some people run Christmas and New Year's together, so maybe
Yeah.
yeah, I could give you a pass on that one. So, but I think that is going to do it for us. We got to an hour and 30 minutes here, so you're welcome, guys. Again, Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. You got a little extra for your patience in dealing with all of our scheduling and algorithmic conflicts here. Um, In other Trek news, the final episode or final episodes and season of Star Trek Lower Decks has officially dropped. It is on Paramount Plus. You can now watch all of it and enjoy it. There are a lot of very surprising cameos in this last season. Some great fan favorite characters come back, and we get to hear from them and get a kind of an update on what they've been up to since we last saw them in Trek. But yeah, that show is done. Strange New Worlds will be returning really soon. I think it's supposed to be March of next year, 2025. We should be seeing some episodes rolling out from there. The Star Trek Section 31 movie is done and it's set to release directly to Paramount Plus here in like I think a month, maybe two. Like they really just kind of surprised me with that one because I was expecting kind of the big to do and rollout and everything else. I mean, you've got Michelle Yeoh, why not, really go for it? But apparently not. It's going to be exclusive to Paramount Plus. So if you want to watch it, get over to Paramount Plus and be ready for that to come out. Um, what else? I think that's it. There isn't any other new Trek stuff. The Star Trek Academy show, while I know they have finished principal casting, as far as I know, that's all they've done. They haven't really shot any scenes. There's no updates on when projected seasons or episodes are going to drop for that. So we're just kind of in a holding pattern until Paramount gets its act together. So we'll see. But other than that, guys, I hope you all have a great holiday season. However, it is that you choose to celebrate, please be safe, be wise, don't do anything too crazy. We don't want to have to hear about anybody, not making it into 2025. All right. So until next time, take care of yourselves.
Thanks, guys.